Going inside the issues of our community, this is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. This year's Cincinnati City Council race, a field race where name recognition is essential and head-to-head debates about real issues are rare, has an odd structure. 26 men and women are officially in the race. 9 of those are incumbents, and in the practical world of politics, they begin with an advantage. Of the other 17, 3 are former members of Cincinnati City Council trying to recapture a seat. In big field races like this, I focus only on non-incumbents, believing incumbents begin with too much advantage to begin with. This morning, I am joined by 4 candidates, the 3 former members of council and 1 current office holder, but not a member of council. Sam Malone is running as a Republican. He served 1 term on council from 2003 to 2005. In his second race for council, he came in 10th, just 1,253 votes out of 9th place. Minette Cooper is a Democrat. She served 4 terms on council from 1995 until 2003 when she was term limited out. Charlie Winburn is a Republican. He served 7 years on council from 1993 until 2001. He then served as a member of the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. Melanie Bates is running as a Charterite. She served on Cincinnati's Board of Education, currently serves there, and has been there since 2002. Before that, she served 6 years on the Ohio Board of Education. Everybody, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Everybody's been here before, so we know the flow of things.
That's right.
And Charlie, let's begin with you. All of you, and other candidates as well, have been talking about crime. The latest statistics from the Cincinnati Police Department show that violent crime is down from 2004 to 2007 by about 15%, serious crime by about 8%, and other crime by about 6%. Given that, Charlie, you've made a big point that if you're not elected, something critical will be missing. What is it that you would bring to council that other members of council haven't already brought and the police department haven't already brought with changes like the Vortex, SERVE, other things that have been implemented in the past few years?
Well, Dan Early, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. Until crime goes down to 0, and you probably say, oh, that's utopia. We cannot be happy because violent crime is just so-called going down. We've got to make sure that it stays down. And I think I bring about that leadership that will establish with the police department and the mayor numeric goals. We need to establish numeric goals that will bring down the homicide rate, the number of people that are shot on the streets of the city of Cincinnati, and the number of shots fired.
But in fact, when you look at Cincinnati, don't the general trend lines follow the national trend lines? There is some ability to influence things in any one city, but these ups and downs of crime reflect some national trends as well that you can't, setting numeric goals, is that realistic?
It's very realistic, and I think if the mayor, the police chief, and city council, we had goals around that we want to cut the homicide rate by the end of next year.
How would you cut it?
Well, first of all, the council needs to have a leadership agenda. We need to take the handcuffs off the cops and let them do their job.
What would you take off the cops?
Well, first of all, I think we need to support the cops. The mayor, the council, them needs to stand with the cops and say, look, we support you, bring down violent crime, and the citizens, we will engage the citizens to help you to do so.
Melanie, you've been a guest on the show most recently, not most recently, but because we talked about school board issues. Mm-hmm. But in the past, year and a half, you've been on a couple of times because of the tragic murder of your husband. What do you say about crime rate? This is a personal thing for you, not just a statistical issue. What do you say about what needs to be done?
Well, what needs to be done is focusing on the people who are creating all the chaos. We know who they are, the cops know who they are, the people in the neighborhoods know who they are, and they know where the hot spots are. Instead of spreading police all over the city, focus on the people that are, that haven't paid their debt to society and continue to offend and continue to watch the hot spots. Have people in the neighborhood engaged.
So you're particularly focused on people who have a high recidivism rate, but does the other side of that, and we'll get to something in a minute that relates to this, but the other side of that is it right to put more and more people in jail for smaller and smaller crimes. So in this past council, they've passed legislation that mandatory jail time for smaller and smaller amounts of marijuana. What do you say about that? Is it the people who are repeat offenders that we should be going after, or more and more offenders?
The repeat offenders, and in particular those who are involved with crimes relating to drugs and firearms and violent crime. And
is the SERVE initiative something that you believe with?
I believe in that. It's a good start. It focuses on homicide.
Okay. Let's come over here. Minette, on this question of crime control, lowering crime, what would you bring to council that you feel maybe isn't there at this point?
Well, I think we really need to discuss. I think that the SERVE program is good. I think that these two people, Charlie and Melanie, have made good suggestions, but we have to, it's bigger than that. We have to involve the community, because the community are what have the keys to who is doing what. We need them enrolled in helping our officers. Our officers need support. They can't do it by themselves. Right. We have to buy into helping ourselves.
Isn't that what is the underlying principle of a lot of the reforms that have come in the last 6 years or so, particularly around CPOP, and are you saying, I mean, I think that principle is out there. Everybody agrees with that principle. Is it that it hasn't been implemented? What's the problem? I mean, nobody would, I think, dispute that the community has to help the police out.
Well, what I think is that there's some people who really fear for their lives if they would give information that can make a difference. So we have to figure out a way to make them feel safe, and it's easier said than done.
It's easier said than done. So what would you do?
I mean, I'm not going to give you a panacea. I don't have it, but we have to work with that. We have to continue to work with that.
Do you believe that the people on council are trying to work with that, or do you bring something that isn't there now?
I believe they're trying to work with that, and I believe the programs they have. I don't think I'm bringing anything special.
Okay. Sam, where are you on this question of crime prevention, lowering crime rates?
Well, I tell you, Dan, I mean, this distinguished panel absolutely add value to the issue of crime. But what I'm talking about is proactive law enforcement. It's very simple. You will never deal with crime until you deal with the systematic problems and causes, root causes of crime. So what we need in place is a centralized gang unit. The reason why you need a centralized gang unit, anytime you go to war, you must have intelligence. And what we lack, and the reason why we're seeing so many hot spots in the city of Cincinnati, is because we don't have the intel. We keep saying that the community knows what's going on. Well, that's a problem, because we need to know what's going on. And if we don't know what's going on, that means that we do not have the intelligence. So we have to provide a mechanism in place to enable our officers and the community to feel safe. The way to do that is to have a centralized unit. Right now we have over 47 centralized units, but we don't have a centralized unit to deal with the most obvious problem that we have in the city of Cincinnati is gangs. Folks say, well, Sam, when you keep saying gangs, I don't understand, I can't relate. And I say, well, you recognize we had the Ku Klux Klans? They say, yes. I said, did they walk around during the day with hoods on their head? They say, no. So do you think gangs walk around with bandanas on their head? No, they tend to blend in. So we must capture the intelligence so we can go in and do battle.
Related to this is the county-wide proposal that is most clearly known as the jail tax. But it's a proposal that's much broader than just adding 400 beds to jail. There's all sorts of programs that are part of this sales tax that's being proposed. Sam, let's begin with you this time. Where do you stand on the passage of that specific proposal?
Well, I think it's a great question, and we certainly need a jail, but I think we have to do our research. I think we have to be prepared to deal with the issue. We need to look at nationally what have other municipalities pay per bid, and make sure that we're in line with that from a business standpoint.
Are you saying that you're for it or against it? Because it's on the ballot. People have to make up their minds.
Absolutely. I don't support it, and here's why. I don't support it because I think we're paying too much per bed. Secondly, I think we need to understand that it's going to take us 3 years to build this jail. So we have to deal with the crime right now for the next 3 years. In addition to that, we already have a lot of folks doing a lot of the programs that we're talking about. So I think we need to bring those folks together and see how we can leverage those dollars so we can provide the services at a lower cost.
Minette, where are you on the jail tax?
I think that, I really think that the plan that the commissioners have put forth is a solid plan. I think they have thought hard. When you realize that that we had commissioners for many, many years who never dealt with the issue, it's just encouraging that they are dealing with the jail and dealing with recidivism and other things that can make a difference.
Are you urging people to vote for it?
I'm urging people to think. I'm not going to urge people to vote. I think they have to do what they want to do.
Are you going to vote for it?
I think I will, yes.
Okay. Melanie, where do you stand on this specific proposal? Because voters have to make up their minds on this.
I do support 27. I mean, we're seeing a lowering of the crime rate in Cincinnati, but countywide. I mean, when was the last time we heard of homicide in Silverton? There's an out-migration of crime. It has to be handled comprehensively. Two of the commissioners came up with a plan. They stuck their necks out. It's a solid plan. It may not be the plan that we would have come up with, but it's a good, solid plan that includes help for people, plus greater jail space for those who create all the chaos and the crime. So I do support 27.
Charlie?
Well, I'm going to spend my time reducing violent crime over the next 3 years. It's going to take 3 years to build this jail. First of all, the tax is too high, and I'm not going to support it because the tax is too high. And I also have a problem with, matter of fact, one of your questions, crime rate is down. Then why do we need a new jail? So we can't have it both ways. We're talking about, crime is going down, but they're trying to sell the jail based on the high crime rate. So another issue
they're trying to sell the jail on 2 points. One, that the Queensgate facility is outdated and inappropriate for the way it's being used at this point, needs to be replaced, plus they need 400 more beds. And the key thing is all of the other programs they want to bring to bear on this.
Well, I have a problem with some of that, especially with sheriff patrols. And I think Simon Lisi's a wonderful man. We are personal friends. I love him. We're just good friends. I have a problem with sheriffs patrolling Cincinnati. Our cops, we pay them. 62% of our budget goes for public safety. 65. I expect 65%, nevertheless, but I expect the Cincinnati police to do their job. And we need to support them, take the handcuffs off of them, and let them do their jobs. And the sheriff patrols need to go home, and the Cincinnati Police Department need to do their job.
And that funding continued patrols by the Sheriff's Department is part of this proposal. So you're saying you're opposed to that?
Well, we have our own budget. That's why we put 65% of the public safety budget there. Let's support our cops. Well, and let's let them know that we appreciate them.
We're part of the county. We're not separate. You know, if I'm all for more of a law enforcement presence in our communities, you can't argue that it didn't hurt over the Rhine. That's for sure.
Well,
it helped
actually,
over the Rhine.
over the Rhine crime rates is one of the places where it's most dramatically.
Yes,
absolutely.
But it's been pushed to. Let's take a look at this though.
Okay.
The crime has been pushed to Wanted Hills and Avondale. That's why we need a vortex in every neighborhood to block off these criminals.
Vortex is very expensive to operate. So which raises the next question.
A centralized gang unit isn't expensive. In fact, you know.
Okay, but here's the thing. I'm aware of time. I want to keep moving on this. Any sort of proposals by the city mean more pressure on the budget. And last year, this time, we saw the struggles over the budget. More money for safety means less money someplace else. Concretely, what would you in the next budget cycle support in terms of additional spending, and what would you take out? Where would you make cuts to make the budget work? Minette, you've been through budgeting a lot of times.
Yes, I have, and I think what I saw is yesterday or day before yesterday, they're talking about putting a new trolleys. We're adding some, they're talking about adding something new that's going to take away basic services. They didn't say what because they didn't know what. But how do you talk about adding something when you are dealing with a tight budget? I don't understand.
So you're saying with the streetcar,
with the streetcar or any new decision.
Anything new. You're opposed to anything new.
I'm opposed to looking at it until you tell me what you're taking away.
Okay, Sam? On the budget question, not the
on
streetcar.
budget.
We'll come back to the streetcar.
Okay, on the budget issue, I certainly look at cutting wasteful spending. Certainly look at
Where? Everybody says that. Everybody's opposed to wasteful spending. Concretely, you've been in city council.
Specifically, I think you have some opportunities with payroll. I think you have some opportunities with departments. We can look at some training.
Cutting numbers of people?
We
lowering salaries? What are we talking?
Well, I think we have to look at that. I think one of the problems is we haven't done a good job of bringing folks in that are experts. We haven't brought in some of the Big Ten accounting firms. We haven't looked at some of our major universities who can help us in trimming our budget. We have not looked at generating
Actually,
revenue.
over the years, we have had some of those studies.
Well, I don't think we've done a good job of bringing those folks in to come up with a long-term plan.
Charlie?
We really need to take...
On budget now.
On budget. We really need to take a look at middle management. When we spend about $72 million a year on middle management, I think we need to establish an efficiency committee to take a look at that. $72 million a year. You got 1,400 employees managing our city. Something is wrong somewhere. So I want to take a look at that. And I think the mayor and council also needs to have a leadership agenda around priorities. They don't. They look to the city manager to do it. Hold it. The city manager works for the mayor and council. We need to establish policy.
It is a city manager form of government,
yes,
though.
but we establish policy. We give direction to the city manager, and that's why the mayor and the council needs to have a clear leadership agenda, and they don't. That's why I want you to elect Charlie Winburn.
Melanie?
Well, what the city doesn't have is a strategic plan. Council doesn't have priorities or priorities and goals to follow. We seem to be tinkering around the edges with the budget. Some people are opposed to funding social services, others are opposed to funding whatever. So number one, we need a strategic plan, and we can form our budget around our priorities. And two, we need to work with Cincinnati Rec and Cincinnati Public Schools. Cincinnati Public Schools have community learning centers. Cincinnati Rec have recreation centers. Why do we have two buildings in neighborhoods with two separate staffs? We need to combine those efforts.
Okay, we're going to take a break, but we're going to come back and continue this discussion. So stay right there. There's lots of things still to talk about. Welcome back. We're here this morning with 4 members of the race, the campaign for Cincinnati City Council. 3 are former incumbents, and 1 is a member of the school board, so holds public office and is attempting to slide over to Cincinnati City Council. We've been talking about budget and initiatives and around a couple of different things. Minette, you raised the question about new and whether we can do new based on our needs. I want to raise something. One is a major issue right now is the banks. It's been here for a decade. There is a vision for the banks that is out there. The report has been made. We're waiting to hear where we stand on this. Where do you stand on moving the banks forward, or are you interested in that?
I'm interested in moving the banks forward. I was on council when we started it, and I keep waiting for it to be finished. But we don't have enough information. The council has not gotten adequate information, and certainly anybody running for council does not have adequate information.
What information do you need? I mean, I feel like we've talked a lot about this.
We have talked a lot about it, but they don't know what, they just have not been clear enough about what they're doing. I was at the African American Chamber yesterday, and they were talking about, well, we're not going to have 30-foot high buildings.
30-story.
30-story high
Just
buildings.
did a show on it.
Well, we're not going to have them across the board, but what are we going to have? What about the density? Are we really
That's
trying
all
to,
laid out in the plan.
But it's not clear enough. I've talked with Roxanne Qualls about it and other people.
Roxanne
We
has
do not
concerns.
have enough information to make a solid decision yet.
Sam, where are you on the banks?
I think we need to, I support moving the banks forward. In any type of business deal, you're going to have, when you have developers, they're going to look at what is my return, my rate of return. And so we have to understand, when we ask developers to come in and do a project, there's going to have to be a trade-off. I think where we getting our hands tied is what is the rate of return for the developer versus what we're willing to give up and versus what we're not willing to give up. So we're going to have to create a win-win for the developers and the community.
Okay, I'm going to switch to a slightly different topic, but it's related. And Minette referenced it before, and that's for this side. What about the streetcar? This went through council this week. Melanie, where are you on streetcar?
Well, it's tinkering around the edges. I mean, it's very nice. It's something visible to show the community that City Council is working, but it's harder to get people to buy into capacity building and shoring up the infrastructure of the city. This is something visible that people can hang on to, and I think that's why it's so popular. It'll be nice, but it's kind of tinkering around the edges.
Do you understand that it's about economic development, not about transportation? Have you looked at it seriously?
Yes. I mean, I haven't been briefed as well as the city council members, obviously, and you know, I do understand that it's around economic development, but again, it's something very visible, and I would need to know more about the specifics of the economic development to understand how it impacts, and if the rate of return. We already have one commercial investor or partner kind of backing out at this point. So,
Charlie, where are you on
Well,
this?
first of all, City Council is bouncing all over the place. They do not have a leadership agenda. They don't know what they're doing. Now we're talking about a streetcar system, which I think is a good concept, but let's get the banks going. I think we need a win-win coalition. And the reason why we don't have the banks moving, because of lack of leadership. That's the bottom line. I believe if the citizens will elect me to Cincinnati City Council, we're going to have a win-win strategy and bring the banks project online.
Okay, so banks and both of these are the struggle with economic development funds and where to put it. Melanie, one of the things that you have talked about, and I noticed this on your website, that home ownership, given the status of the real estate market right now, is that home ownership drive that you lay out on the website, is that realistic?
well, I mean, it's always cyclic. What is realistic is the proper education of people who want to enter that market, because that's, you know, the major reason why we have such a high rate of foreclosure is people are getting into deals that are over their heads. Education can continue, and when the market is right, those folks will be able to move forward. So yeah, I do think it's important.
Okay. On the question of, and I've talked to Melanie about this in the past, so I'm not going to direct this to her, but what about the issue of the relationship of the schools to the future of the city? Because everybody knows the quality of our schools is critical. How do you see that relationship moving forward, Sam?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things I think is key. Cincinnati, the city has provided the school system with about $5 million annually. What I would like to see the city do is have some standards in place. We need to find a way to increase parental involvement. When we have more parental involvement with the kids in the school system, you'll see the kids perform a little stronger.
But the school system has attempted that for years. Is there anything City Council can do?
Well, I tell you, we have to be creative, and you can't give up. I mean, success, you just can't compromise on success. If we don't have parental involvement, we have to find a way to get more parental involvement. I'm aware of the Bill Gates program with providing computers and laptops for kids to increase, and even training and tutoring for parents, because if the parents can't do the academic, can't assist their children with the academic performance, then the kids won't have that support at home.
Minette, where are you about? You've been on council before, the relationship of schools and City Council, the Board of Education and City Council. What can be done to improve this?
Well, as a former teacher, I think the first thing we have to realize is it is absolutely important. The youth in our schools are the citizens of our future. No two ways about it. So we have to make sure that our youth move forward.
Do you support the school levy?
Absolutely.
Sam, by the way,
absolutely.
do you support the school
I
levy?
do support the school levy.
Okay, Charlie.
I support the school levy, and we got to be kidding if we think the mayor and council should take over our schools. By the way, when it was floated a year ago by the mayor, in those cities where you have an executive mayor is where they're taking over school system. I think we ought to let the schools do their job, support our superintendent. I do support the levy. I think it's very important that we support our children.
Melanie? Support the levy?
Well, right, I do.
You're on the board?
I'm
you
on the
didn't
board.
support the last levy.
I didn't, and that was when there were a lot of questions about the integrity of the numbers that was being given to the board. We have a new treasurer, and there's no reason for this treasurer not to tell us the truth. So I'm supporting Jonathan Boyd's projections and the levy and the need for it.
And he was on the show last week, so we dealt with that. Sam, we got less than a minute left, but we got 30 seconds left. Do you want to say something about the legal trouble you found yourself in 2 years ago at this time?
Well, absolutely. I mean, folks know I was tried by the state of Ohio, and I was found, I was exonerated by the state of Ohio. I'm a loving, caring father, and we're going to, move the city forward.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We're going to be with you on election night, and thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, we complete our interviews for council race and focus on the countywide tax levy. Have a good week.